Hello everyone, it's been such a long time we had a tutorial on this channel. I have missed you guys so much. Hope you have missed me too. I think it's safe to say a happy new year to you. We welcome you to the year 2023. Wishing it brings us favor and all the goodness that God has in store for us. Hope you have been doing very great. I have been doing wonderfully well. My name is Priska Oserali. In case you're just joining us for the first time, I am the lead instructor at Gold Imperial Academy, where we teach interested persons how to draft their own patterns from scratch and create great garments. I am also the creative director at Gold Imperial, where we create bespoke garments for women and young girls. Welcome once again. We are back and better with great tutorials on Gold Imperial Academy's channel. So please tell your friends and loved ones that we are back. If you are yet to subscribe to this channel, please do well to subscribe, share with your friends and loved ones. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up as well. Turn on notifications so that you'll be the first to know each time we post new videos. To kick off our series of tutorials, we'll be starting with something easy and beginner friendly. It is a kimono jacket. Yes, it's really trending now, and so you can create one for yourself or even for your clients. It's beginner friendly, like I said before, so you don't have to know so much about sewing to be able to pull one off. We'll be creating one with the Ankara fabric in this tutorial, and I hope you will find it quite easy to replicate. Please tag us on Instagram at jgodeimperial and on Facebook at jgodeimperial when you replicate this. Don't forget to like this video, share with your loved ones, and subscribe if you're yet to. Also turn on notifications so that you'll be the first to know whenever we post new videos. All right, if you have your Ankara fabric ready, let's do this.
All right, so here is the fabric that we'll be using. We'll be using this beautiful Ankara print. Unfortunately, you can hardly tell between the right side of the fabric and the wrong side of the fabric. This is the wrong side of the fabric, okay? So usually what I do in cases like this where it's very difficult to differentiate between the right side of the fabric and the wrong side of the fabric, I just give a mark like this, okay? So that I would know the wrong side and the right side of the fabric, okay? So now I have laid out my fabric on my cutting table, and then I want to mark out my measurements. The measurements that I'll be using for my client is the bust point is 12.5, the bust round is 46, my waist round is 41. Okay, you don't need your waist round if you are not going to be shaping it, okay, but if you're going to shape it, then you need your waist round. My client's waist measures 41, her hip measures 50. Okay, so that means 50 is my largest measurement. So what I'll be doing is for each of my measurements, I would add 2 inches, okay, for ease. All right, you know, you wouldn't want this to be tight, except if you really want it to be fitted, but usually the kimono jacket is a loose garment, okay? It has a lot of ease. So I have my fabric laid out, so I'm going to be taking my measurements. So first of all, I want to be sure that I have enough to cover my largest measurement, and of course I do. So I'm going to go ahead, so that means I'm fine. So this is my fabric. I have folded in 4, that is I folded in 2. Okay, you can see I folded in 2 and then folded in 2 again. So this will be the front and this will be the back, okay, because my front is going to have an opening, so I've just folded it in a way that it will be easy for me. You can also use the side that has both sides folded, okay, any side is fine because we will still be making a cut on the front, but I prefer to use because I'll be making a cut in the front anyways. Okay, so here becomes your side seam, while here becomes your center front and your center back. All right, so moving ahead, first of all, I would like to mark out 1 inch, okay, so that becomes my top line. I'm going to connect that. So the next thing I want to do is to mark out my neckline. For my neckline, I'll be using 3.5, okay, 3.5. This is my 3.5 right here, okay. Then the next thing I want to do is to mark out my shoulder slant. You can use 1 or 1.5, but I prefer to use 1.5. Still on my top line, I'll mark out my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement for my client is 16. So I'm using 8, that's 16 divided by 2. Okay, this is what I have. And then this will be the sleeve, okay? So that means this will not have such a long sleeve. All right, her short sleeve measurement is 7.5 and I have almost 10 here. Okay, now for this I'm still going to add like a 2-inch band on it. Okay, so by the time I add my 2-inch band, so that means what I have here is 9.5 because I need half an inch to join my band. So that means I should have around 11.5. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to mark out my shoulder slant. So I'll just take this all the way to my 1.5 inch mark right here. Okay, so next I want to mark out my bust point. All right, so marking from my top line, my bust point for my client is 12.5. So I'll just mark that 12.5, okay, 12.5. Then I'll come here again from my top line again, I'll measure 12.5 and then I'll connect that in a straight line. Now remember I said if you wanted to have a bit of a shape, you can measure your waist point, but if you do not want it to be shapy, just measure all the way to your hip point. Because my client is a plus size person, I would like to shape it in just a little bit so that it can flatter her figure a bit. So for me, I'll be measuring my waist point. My waist point for my client is 17. Okay, so I'm going to be measuring 17. So I'll square that out. From my waistline, I'll measure my hip line. The hip line for my client is 9. So I'll just go ahead and measure that. Now note that I'm measuring from my waist point, okay? Because it's best to measure from your waist point. So there you have it. I have all my measurements all drawn out. So this is my bust line, my waistline, my hip. So this point becomes the opening of our kimono. However, this is looking like it's going to be a bit too wide. So what we are going to do is we'll come up a bit. Okay, you can come up by say 2 inches or 1 inch. Okay, let's do 1 inch. So if you're doing 2 inches here, well, I'm going to be doing 1 inch because I wanted to still have a little bit of wideness. So come up by 1 inch. Okay, from your bust line. So I'll just measure that. So the next thing I want to do is to mark the shape of my neckline. Now for this one, I'm going to be giving it a collar. Okay, I'm going to have like a V shape for my neckline. So all I'm just going to do, since I've already marked this out for the front, okay, you can use your bust line as your guideline depending on how long you want it to be. You can come up a bit by like 2 inches, okay, and then you connect that to your neck measurements just the way I am doing, like so. Okay, or you could do it all the way to your bust line. Okay, so if you were connecting all the way to your bust line, you would go this way. Can you see that? Okay, so I have 2 lines here, 2 inches above my bust line and on the bust line. Okay, so whichever one you choose, I'm deciding to go up by 2 inches because the bust line is quite low. Okay, if for example your bust line is 9 inches, I think it's fine. You don't need to go up. I think that should be fine. But for my client, I prefer to go up by 2 inches so that it's not too low. The next thing I want to do is to measure our bust measurements. So for my client, her bust is 46. Dividing that by 4, I have 11.5. So here is my 11.5. Okay, now I'm going to add 2 inches ease. Okay, that includes my seam allowance. Okay, so my ease is 1.5, my seam allowance is 0.5. Do you understand? So 0.5 plus 1.5, that gives me 2. So that is what I'll be adding here. So for this, I'm just going to connect like a curve. Just make a curve and connect. Okay, can you see? All right, then next I want to measure out my waist. My waist for my client is 41 divided by 4 gives me 10.25. So I'll connect that. Okay, remember I said you only need this if you want to shape in a bit. So I'll add my 2 inches. All right, the next thing I want to do is to measure my hip round measurement. Okay, so my hip is 50. That is for this client, it is 50. We're dividing that by 4 and that gives us 12.5. So this is 12.5 plus the 2 inches ease and sewing allowance, that gives us here. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is to connect that. We'll use a curve and just connect that. Okay, so next we'll measure the full length of the dress. You can either use the short length for the dress, okay, for your client's dress, or you just measure wherever your client wants the kimono jacket to get to. So for my client, she did not really specify on where she wants the kimono jacket to get to, although her short dress length measurement is 39. Okay, I could use 39 as well. Whatever measurement you're taking, take from your top line, please. So take all the way to where you want your length to get to. All right, so that is it. So this is my 39, and then I'll add my seam allowance, 2 inches or 1.5 for that. Okay, so I'm using 1.5. So here goes. The next thing I want to do, since I already have the full length measurement for this jacket, is to take the measurement that I have on my hip line, which is 14.75, and then I'll take that same measurement at the hem, okay, that is at the full length of this garment, okay, and then I'll connect in a straight line as well. Here we have it. So remember, if you do not want it shaped, all you just have to do is just to connect that in a straight line like this, okay? So that means it will look boxy a bit, okay? Look like a box. All right, so just have this. So that means when I'm cutting, I'll go this way and then curve it that way, okay? But I want this to be a bit shaped, so I'm going to be going with that shape right there. For the neckline, you'll also be marking out your back neckline. So for this, I'll be using 1.5, curve that out this way. Okay, you can also use your curve ruler. You can use your curve ruler to curve that, or you just use your free hand, all right, whichever one that you prefer. Okay, so this is it. So I'm going to be cutting now. Just cut all of this out. When I'm cutting, I'm going to cut out my back neckline first. But before I do that, I would like to take a 0.5 seam allowance at the shoulder line. Okay, I prefer to take a seam allowance at that point, and then I'll be connecting that all the way. I'll also need to take a seam allowance at the armhole, so I'll just take a 1 inch seam allowance. Okay, so this is 1 inch. You remember we went up by 1 inch, so I'll just blend that back into my waistline. Okay, so if you're going to be taking a seam allowance right there, then probably you just use your bust line measurement, okay? But I prefer to just put my seam allowance so I can see the allowances that I am adding, okay? All right, so I'm going to cut this out now. So I'll just start cutting from my hemline. We'll open up the armhole. So now we'll separate. This is the back. Okay, can you see the back? So we'll separate the two so that we can cut out the neckline for the front. Remember that our front will be having two pieces, okay, because we want that opening right there. Now, before we cut out the neckline for the front, we'll also be going in by 0.5, okay, just to make the front open up some more. Just carefully blend it into the neckline right there. So now I'm cutting this out. When you're cutting, ensure that your fabric pieces are still together, okay, because there's the likelihood that it may shift. Just be careful. All right, so here we have it. Can you see the shape of the neck? Okay, so this is the neckline right here. So the next thing I'm going to be doing is to join the shoulder lines, okay? So this is my front right here. Okay, this is how the front will be. Okay, so you see why it is good for you to mark the wrong side of the fabric for this type of fabric that they look similar. Okay, can you see? So this is the wrong side of the fabric. I marked that before we started measuring at all. So I would just place it like so. Okay, so the wrong side will be facing me. All right, then I'll join at the shoulder line like so. I'll join at the shoulder line like so. Now when I'm done with that, I would then measure round my neckline to know the length of the collar that I'll be adding. Remember I said I'm going to be adding a collar, and then I'm also going to be adding a band. So when I'm done joining, I'll then mark out all the places I'll be adding my collar and my band. For that, I'll be using a black satin fabric to combine that to do the neckline and then the band as well. Okay, so here I have joined the shoulder lines together. Okay, can you see? So this is what we now have. So now I'm going to be measuring all the way from the hem of the jacket all the way to the other hem of the jacket. So I'll measure this way. All right, just measure all the way. Okay, this is to enable us to know the length of the collar that we'll be needing. Okay, so you can either measure to your center back right here, or you can just measure all the way to the other side of it. Okay, so if I'm going to be measuring all the way to my center back, I'll just fold it in two like this. Okay, fold in two and then measure. Okay, can you see? So I have my center back right here. You could even notch it so that you'll be sure you are at the right point. Okay, all right, so here. So I'm going to take my measurement from the hem. So right here, just measure from the hem. So here I've got 46.25. Can you see? So that means if I multiply 46.25 by 2, I should be having around 92.5. Yes, I'm correct. Yeah, 92.5. So my fabric length, that is the one I'll be using as the collar, will be 92.5 in length. Okay, then I want it to be 2 inches wide, and then plus my seam allowance, so that will be 2 inches plus 0.5, so that gives me 2.5. Now I'll be cutting that on fold. Do you understand? So that means when I open it up, I should have 5 inches. On fold, I should have 2.5. Do you understand that? Okay, so since I have measured here and I have 46.25, that is exactly what I'm going to be measuring on the black fabric that I'll be using for the collar. This is the satin fabric that I'm going to be using. So I'm just going to do my 46.25 now. Okay, then thereafter I'll be adding a fusible interfacing, all right, to keep it stable, and then join to my kimono jacket. I'll also be cutting out a band for this. The same 2 inches is what I'll be using, plus my seam allowance, that will be 2.5. All right, so here are my fabric pieces that I'll be using for the collar. This will be for the band, okay, at the round sleeve, all right, while this will go on the collar. So this place where I have joined together will be at the center back. So this is what I mean. This is my fabric. I have already notched the center back right there. Can you see? So I'm going to go ahead and pin this onto the center back. Okay, just pin it, and then I'll start from one hem of my fabric. Okay, from this hem or the other hem, whichever one is convenient for you. So I'm just going to do this, all right, all the way. Just pin everything down. Okay, all right, pin, and then you start stitching. Here it is, we are almost done. So I've stitched my collar and also the band to the round sleeve of the garment. So the next thing we want to do now is to just couple everything together, and voila, we're done. So we're going to just stitch it like this. Okay, so remember I took 1 inch seam allowance here. I think I'm going to reduce it because on the body of the garment I took 0.5. So that this portion of the sleeve can relax, I'll reduce the seam allowance by 0.5 so that I'll have 0.5 from start to finish. So that is it. I'll just go ahead and join all the way to the bottom of the dress. Okay, that is on both sides, and we're done. Now don't forget to iron as you go. Okay, press your seams as you go. So let me quickly join the sides, and then I'll put it on the body form for you to see the outcome. So if you're yet to subscribe to our channel, don't forget to subscribe today. Also like and share this video with your friends. When your friends ask for videos regarding what we put up, please don't forget to recommend our channel, turn on notifications so that you'll be the first to know each time we post a new video. You can partake in any of our online courses. Just send us a DM via bit.ly/Gold Imperial, and you'll be able to chat with us directly to know how to begin your registration process. Okay, now so I'm just going to go ahead and then join this all the way to the hem and then show you on the body. So we'll come your way again. Bye.